Hello and welcome back to Rehydrate. This season we discussed the Netflix adaptation of Three Body Problem. And today we have a sort of interesting experiment that we've been talking about and going to try to run. It's going to be a draft of scenes that we would like to see adapted for future seasons of the show and a scene that we don't want to see adapted to the future season of the show. I'll go over the rules in a little bit. But just a warning, because we're going to be talking about episodes and scenes that are coming up. It's obviously full spoilers for all of the books and all of the TV show. So if you haven't read the books or you haven't watched the TV show, go do those things and come back. My name is Dan, and I have read the entire series and watched the Tencent adaptation and the Netflix adaptation.
My name is Thalia. I've read the entire series multiple times, but I've done the most rereads of Death's End, and I've watched the Netflix adaptation and a little bit of the Tencent.
My name is Priya. I've read the entire series. I've watched the entire Netflix series, and I have watched, I think, 2 episodes of the Tencent series.
Okay, just a little bit of follow-up for just sort of for everyone's knowledge. I thought it'd be interesting and helpful to collect all the summaries. We've done one season per book for Three Body Problem, Dark Forest, and Death's End, and had detailed summaries of all of those, and we have them written up. But I decided to go ahead and edit all of the summaries together in one episode per book. So if you're interested in just knowing the summaries for the book, or you want to go and revisit it for whatever reason, and you don't want to read it, then the summaries are there. So they have episodes on our webpage, which is rehydrate.space, and it's in the feeds. So to talk a little bit about what the rules are for this episode, like I said, it's going to be a draft. It's one interesting way to keep talking about the series. Basically, we're not done. We're not finished talking about it yet. We probably never will be. But we're all eagerly anticipating season 2 and beyond. And I thought an interesting premise would be thinking about, like, given the material that we know is coming in the books, like, what would we want to see adapted? And conversely, what we don't want to see adapted, like just parts of the series that we don't like, or we want to see improved or not included for whatever reason. So the rules are, there's be 5 rounds. We're going to go in, it's called a serpentine order. And so basically, any of us can pick any of the things that we want to see or don't want to see in any order. But once they're picked, they can't be picked again. Before this episode, I went through and kind of detailed a list of all the scenes that are coming up in kind of a broad stroke order. So we all kind of working off the same list. And so once something is picked, either for pro or con, then it's off the board and you have to pick something else. So we will start with round 1, and we have the order will be Priya, Thalia, and then me. And then for round 2, it'll be me, Thalia, and Priya, and then continue on that way. So let's just get into it and say, Priya, what is your first pick for round 1?
I think my first pick for round 1, and it doesn't have to be in order of book order, right? It could be either from Death's. Okay.
Yeah, and any order
first before someone else eliminates it.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay, so my first pick will be the scene with the ring. I really, really want to see that portrayed on screen for multiple reasons. I think that scene is written in a way that's very poetic. I always felt like, there's 2 modes of writing for Lucy Shin. One is like very technical sci-fi writing, and then he dabbles in like poetic prose writing. And I think The Ring was definitely an example of that type of poetic prose writing that I want to see translate onto the screen in a way that we've already seen Weiss and Benioff kind of dabbling in creating scenes that are more poetic in nature, especially with Will's character. So I would really love to see how they blend the visual dynamics that would be required for a 4D scene, along with pairing it with something that's more poetic in prose and dialogue. So that would be very interesting to see, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be difficult to to do it. Like I don't know how they'll do it, but yeah, like that. And I know Talia, you really like that part too. So sorry if she took your your pick, but
Apologies.
Reshuffling my draft over here. No, I actually approached my selections a little bit differently. One of the sort of genres, I guess, that I chose were things that would be good in almost a bottle episode, things that could stand alone, and would be amplified or heightened by understanding and appreciating the story and the context and the impact, but things that I think are visually impressive. And an example of what's already been done is, in my opinion, how well crafted the video game was. There are people who are 3D printing versions of those goggles to like slide on, because it's certainly amplified if you know that it's software to, incite you to despise the human race and bring on the Trisolaran coming, but it's also just like really cool and really slick and really well done. So, with that preamble being said, a scene that I would like to see adapted is in Dark Forest when Zhang Beihai obtains meteorite bullets. He uses those meteorite bullets, uses them on a lathe to craft them into indistinguishable from meteor shower attacks, and assassinate scientists in this really sneaky way. I think that the interaction he has with the meteorite seller is so self-contained and beautiful. The author describes him, the meteorite collector, as someone who lives in a world of his own. And I can just see like a Christopher Walken taking that role and just appearing and being brilliant, and that being easy to watch in excerpt. And then, appreciation for Zhang Beihai's bigger plan would amplify it. But I think it'd be really cool to see that scene with some life breathed into it.
yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of conversation around like online that I've been reading around like, oh, is Raj going to be a good Zhang Beihai? And I think like that's a scene that's really going to put it into it and bring him into his own, right? Like he's gonna, yeah, like I can see like they're already like setting the stage for him, his character to be like that, for him to be not happy with the state of using old technology, right? And like always being for kind of advancing technology. That's Zhang Beihai's like sort of whole motivation in the beginning of like making sure that we don't just like rely on like old I forgot what they called it, but there's like the conventional like
technology.
yeah,
Like
there's like conventional propulsion versus like the new kind of propulsion.
Non-media versus media.
Yeah. And
Yeah, absolutely.
good pick. Okay, so I will take the next pick. And for my first pick, I think it won't be much of a surprise, is that I'm going to pick the scene of Yun Tianming and Cheng Xin meeting in space for the first time. The scene of her taking the spaceship to go talk to him, and kind of having their initial conversation with the lights, and like just the tension between him, like them trying to convey the information to them, and just the tension of her like being a danger the whole time of being blown up, because the Sofan told her like, hey, if there's too much information conveyed, you're just gonna blow up the ship, right? So like they have to be very careful, and she tries her best at the beginning to like try to get information out, but the light turns yellow. She has to, and she just eventually gives up. And then Yin Tianming, our analogs for Jin and Will, Yin Tianming then says, all right, let me just tell you, let's just talk, reminisce about our time, and then our childhood, and talk about these fairy tales. And she's like, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. But like the whole time she's thinking like, I have to memorize every single word. And on top of this, it's all built on top of like the emotional the emotional arc of her like seeing Yin Ming again, like after her whole hope was lost of like him being lost in space. And I've said this on the show, and I've said this like billions of times to everybody who will listen, is that I think like the work that the show did to set up Will and Jin is going to make this part like a million times better, just because like we're invested in those characters, and it's not just like some brain that she she wanted to use for her project. It's like a person that she cares about and loves. And so, yeah, that, I mean, again, I don't think it's much of a surprise, but that would be my number one pick.
Good choice.
And so let's jump into round number two. And I'm going to have a super hot take here. And I'm going to go with a scene that I don't want to see adapted. And I'm going to preface this by saying that I love this scene in the book, and
Uh-oh.
I think it's great, but I don't want to see it adapted, and it is the Singer chapter. I don't think
Fine.
that the show would do a good job. I don't think that they should show an alien race. I don't think that they they need to, right? I think like showing it in a visual medium is only going to is going to be the detriment of that story, of that thing. I think the more impactful thing is them, seeing like the part that happens afterward of the 2D foil and them trying to, figure out what it is that's enough. I don't think that we need to have the same way. I don't know that we need to have that we didn't get like the Sophon chapter or that kind of stuff, and it was fine. I think the Singer chapter is best left to the page and not to the TV show. So super hot take, I know, but that's that's my do not want to see adapted pick.
Damn, that is a hot take.
Is that a hot take?
But you are making me think more about it, actually.
That was my number one choice, was the Singer chapter. I do not want to see that adapted.
You don't.
I can't want to, because adapting it, like, just think about it. Like, you'd have to craft a believable alien, introduce them, explain their contexts, show them on screen, show their technology, and even that amount of input is exaggerating the importance of Earth and the importance of, like, anyone. The whole point is it's just like a lowly worker closing a case that someone else may have gotten to first. And it really only works on the page.
Yeah, I mean, if you've seen the 10-cent version, like they show like the Trisolarans, and well, like the representation in VR of the Trisolarans, and it's not great. It's fine, but it's not great. It's not mind blowing like it should be, like it is on the page, right? And I have a fear that the Singer chapter would be the same, and like Singer chapter is great, one of my favorites from the
Good.
like
the Jar Jar Binks or something.
I know. I think like the reason I picked it is because like I think they can only ruin it and not add more to it. So
yeah,
that's
my question though to you both is there a way that it can be done without a visual representation of the alien? Because if there is a way to do this in a way that doesn't show the alien or doesn't use English as a language, I would be very interested in seeing that. Like,
Americans don't like to read, because the answer to that is like a text console, right? Like back and forth, like the alien equivalent of email.
Not necessarily. We could hear sounds versus language. There could be some way of doing it in the form of sounds being translated into subtitles. Though I don't know how I feel about that just yet. I'm just like spitballing.
That's what I'm saying. It relies on subtitles, and
yes, that's true.
And Americans won't read.
That is
but I was watching,
not true.
I don't know. I was watching the very first episode, and instead of like paying attention to the Cultural Revolution, I hear like, wait, is this show in Chinese? I'm like, okay, quiet for like 2 minutes, You'll see. There is a little bit of reading.
So I was of the opinion that I would have wanted to see that scene, but now I want to recant that, because I only want to see it if it can be done in a way that's like super unique and super clever, and like, hey, I wouldn't have thought of this. But like, a cynic might say everything under the sun has been done. So I don't know. I don't know if Weiss and Benioff have this in them, but like I completely agree with you that I don't want to see the scene done in like any kind of a representation of the alien sort of way. So
I think it can't it can't be like adapted this like directly from the page, right? Like people always want to see like the one-to-one adaptations, and I think this scene in particular cannot be
No.
and not done well. So
I
like
would
Especially
love that
given
to
the
be
fact that it's like dialogue. And we're trying to envision an alien race having the sort of dialogue that humans would have, but like the way that he steps around that in the written form is that the way that they speak is like very indirect, kind of uh almost kind of like not even poetic. It's like almost nonsensical, but just
mm,
about makes sense. So yeah, that's why it's such a joy to read on the page. And you're right that it that feeling can very easily be completely lost in the visual representation.
yeah.
I would love for us all to be proved wrong, but since we're swinging like this, and I no longer have this singer chapter, I am up next, right, Dan?
Yep.
In Serpentine. I'm gonna go ahead and beat Priya to the punch and say the do not show me, do not adapt is anything with Luoji's waifu that he hallucinates, and then I don't want it, like, I mean, anything to do with it. I don't want him writing a book about her because his ex-girlfriend told him to. I don't want him dreaming of her. I don't want him taking her on a road trip. I don't want him getting drunk with her. I don't want him paying or making the world governments pay to find her, gaslight her into thinking that she's part of his plan, care about her kidnapping when their kid goes who doesn't show up. Like, I don't want anything to do with it. Find some other way to make Saul more grounded. I have nothing to do with it. Make him gay, even. I don't care. Just something different.
See, the plot twist here is that I thought Dan was going to come out with this scene, and that's why I deliberately decided I will not pick it because I wanted to hear Dan agonize, like, preemptively agonize over that scene. But, the plot twist is that Talia has taken up that mantle.
Dan took mine, but I hope I'm doing justice to the
You
amount
are
of
very
fetching.
much so. I
Yeah.
enjoyed the rant tremendously of all the ways and forms in which you don't want to see this on screen.
I do not want it on a train. I do not want it on a plane.
I didn't choose it because I thought it was too obvious. And to be fair, like I thought of this format like way before I thought of the singer thing. I thought of the singer thing just yesterday. Yeah, like because as I was like writing, as I was thinking about it, I was like, wait a minute, like that's the one I don't want it. I was like kind of assuming they would be the Jungyan stuff, but like I think the singer one is better. But yeah, like I'd
At the
also
same time,
agree.
like we need the concept of the singer chapter. It's almost like it straddles between must be adapted and cannot be adapted.
I think
Because
like well, okay, we're going back, but I think like if they just talk about the like seeing the 2D foil and like trying to figure out what it is, and then maybe some explanation later on from like the Guani Fan perspective, talking about the nature of the galactic universe. I think that's enough. But yeah,
Wait,
Zhongyan
sorry.
stuff, like no, thank you.
Slow down. The nature of the galactic universe is enough talking about the nature of it?
What's that?
How do we, that's our first glimpse into two-dimensionalization and that a dark forest strike is much worse than a photoid. So how can we get the same like magnitude?
I mean, maybe we don't, right? Maybe we just see it. We see it happen, right? And then later on, like, because when Gwen Yifan talks about like the dimensional attacks and like the nature of them and how
Right.
like the advanced civilizations use like the
That
laws
could
of
work.
physics,
Okay,
right?
so it's only revealed after the fact to the two survivors from Earth,
Yeah,
not to the audience first.
right.
It could be a bit campy, but like now my brain is like the wheels are spinning and I'm thinking, what if it's communicated entirely through shadows, sounds, and then you see something being flicked?
That's the predictor.
It could be done. It could be done. Like you don't have to show the aliens. You could just show like a
Objects on the wall of the cave.
exactly objects like tinkering happening, some weird tech stuff that like looks completely bizarre and not of the human realm. Um, I'm coming back around to it. I feel like it could be done.
Wait, so this is your pick though. So what do you, I mean, I just zigged because Dan zigged, but feel free to zag and talk about what you do want to see adapted.
Yeah, your turn.
No, that would be too easy. I could just come around and say, actually, I do want to see the Singer
Good
chapter, but
point.
I'm kind of on the fence about it now. So I'm gonna pick I want to pick something that I don't want to see. Um because I just want to keep it like all in this one section. Just that compulsion is there. Um, so what I don't want to see is Cheng Sheen waking up and finding herself surprised to see that, you know, men are very feminized in this new world and all that commentary. And I honestly, I feel like they wouldn't do that anyway, but I just want to take this opportunity to talk about how jarring I found it sometimes when Lucy Shin talks about women in a certain way. So like or not specifically women, because I feel like he has made Cheng Shin's character for the most part a very sympathetic, nurturing character. But I think that there are some hangups that he has when it comes to like the feminine and the commentary on that at times. Like, oh, all the men are feminine, which means that they're less masculine, which means that blah, 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 whatever.
Right. For
That's
every 1 ounce of femininity gained, 1 ounce of masculinity is lost.
exactly. It's like there's this you know, you sacrifice your masculinity when you become a man who is very, I guess, what used to be referred to as what is it? Metrosexual? That's what the term used to be.
Yes.
Like I feel like it's just that she's seeing men who are dressing more effeminate, and she's drawing or he is drawing a lot of commentary based off of that. So I think that they will do away with all of that, and that will be for the best, because sometimes it's just a bit on the nose.
Yeah, that was also my list, my backup pick for
I
no.
didn't I didn't think they would dare to even begin to include that, you
No,
know?
I don't think that they will. Like I said, I just feel like it needs to be said that I feel like already they have diverged from certain things in their adaptation, and I hope that um this diverging continues to omit a lot of these less desirable elements of the books, because it's like the best thing about an adaptation is that they can pick the best and leave out the rest, right? So um I hope that they continue to leave out the things that are not so great, like this and like Loji's fake imaginary girlfriend. So I guess now that we got what we don't want to see out of the way, we can go back to talking about what we do want to see. So one of the things that I want to see is Cheng Sheen seeing art made by Trisolarans, or just the world seeing art made by Trisolarans, because I think that it'll be very fun to see how all the ways in which it seems human, and then what the tells might be that it's not made by humans, that it's made by aliens. So that would be like a very interesting thing to represent visually. And I think that unlike the Singer stuff, this could be done this gives a lot of freedom and a lot of creativity license to the creators of the show to bring that to screen.
I think what's more is like I think the implication in the book is that like a lot of the art is inspired by Yun Tian Ming to start with, right? So like we're gonna maybe like Jin will see a lot of stuff she's familiar with, you know, maybe like the boats or whatever, right? It's like stuff that she can be familiar with, but like it's still gonna be like higher, like different kind of art from the perspective of the quote unquote Santee, but like, yeah, like I think like it'd be more personal to her than, you know, and I'm not thinking that's maybe they might lean into that angle, right? When they actually like start showing that part of it. So I think like, again, like I think the show can kind of make that even more interesting by being a visual medium, but then also having that backstory between the two of them.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I hadn't even thought about that. That of course it's Yun Tianming who inspires that, but that'll be very interesting to carry forward all the imagery that's been associated with Will so far. like the boat imagery, etc., like you said. Um,
They also
and
had the drawing, right, in the fairy tales
yeah,
book. Yeah.
so Jingxin kind of, or Jin in the show, seeing those scenes and being reminded of Will could kind of foreshadow the fact that, she's going to see him again. So that will actually be really fun.
We all think so differently. This almost made my list of I definitely don't want to see it. I guess the reasoning being that, and I really liked it in the book. I liked the experience that Chongqing has interacting with these plays and the artists and the movie that's based on that poem. I even made Dan let me read the poem in Chinese on the air. So like I obviously am an appreciator. However, I do feel like since 2010 and like since this book, the idea of things that appear human but are actually not no longer seems miraculous and just feels like being sort of pranked or scammed with the explosion of LLMs and AI generated images and plays and music. And, it sort of has deadened me to that wonder. And I don't think it would land like, hey, like, can you guess this actually wasn't a human? It was actually GPT-4o. And I was like, yeah, okay. What have we gained here? It's actually an alien, but they're using all the same tech, and it would be a little damp for me. So I almost listed that on my hope they don't.
That's so interesting and kind of depressing to think about. And it's making me think about recent experiences I've had with starting to use ChatGPT. And I noticed something like whenever I ask it for like technical answers on things, it's like spot on and it's great. And it actually seems like it makes me feel like I'm talking to a person when I ask it for like, like a medical question, let's say, for example, like what
Or
does
it's
this mean on
excellent
like
training
a
data for medical questions.
right. But if I ask it to come up with something creative, that's when it immediately, I feel like it short circuits. That's the tell. Like the creativity element is the tell. So there's also a lot of chatter in like the art community about AI art. Like basically like artists will draw like scenes from like a favorite book, for example, or like, just representations of things that, they've read about or something, and then they'll post them online, and then someone takes it and generates like an AI version of it. And a lot of times people will like expose these AI, art. The AI art theft will be exposed next to the actual art piece, and
Yes, I've
you
seen
can
that.
you can just see like, oh my gosh, like there is like creativity here, and here everything looks kind of uniform. Like I see a lot of AI art and like the character faces and stuff, they all look kind of the same. They're all cut from the same mold basically. And I think that what I had been thinking about recently is that like AI is not going to ever truly replace human creativity. At least that's my naive conviction. um, so I think that I still believe that it would be interesting to play around with that, with the idea of that. And it may land because I feel like a lot of people are actually thinking about this, whether or not AI could achieve that level of creativity that is on par with humans.
And for me, it's not about like whether it will or will not replace creativity of humans. I'll leave that to philosophers. But, there's one use of an LLM, which might be, hey, like I need to write a cover letter and it needs to sound like I really want to work at this company and I have 25 companies to apply to. Of course, an LLM should write that, right? And to add to that justification, it's probably going to be read by an applicant tracking system. So you can make the robot talk to the other robot and no one's really harmed. But even if an AI can imitate the creativity, like when artists and people who are promoting their events, and I saw an example of this quite recently, some people who are, advertising their event, and I took a look at the, flyer or the event write-up, and like this is 100% written by an LLM, not like inspired by it, but this is almost exactly just copy pasted. And it definitely gets across all the information and it makes the theme of the event very clear, but it just feels very cheap, you know, because it's intended for a human audience. So I didn't I didn't quite care for it, and I hope that we don't spend too much time with the aliens. But I've wasted enough of your time on disagreeing on yours because I need to state my own scene that I would like to see adapted. Um, I would say to jump backwards in time. Uh, Death's End is my favorite book, but I think I'm going to return to book two and look at when they're aboard natural selection and we see Zhang Beihai give a command for everyone to enter a deep sea state because they are escaping at top speed. And I hope it has not changed greatly. And I hope that Raj is able to pull that off in the same way that Zhang Beihai pulls it off, which gives the crew and the fleet command and the audience all the exact same experience. So we all get to learn at the exact same time that natural selection has gone rogue and that Beihai has been the secret fourth wall facer. And like all that realization happens all at once. Whether you greet that with joy or horror, I love that moment of discovery. So I really hope we get to see that. And I'm hopeful that we will.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm pretty sure we will. That arc will be pretty faithful to the book. I would imagine. Like if I had to guess, like I would guess that like yeah.
I hope they don't tip their hand, I guess, because everything that Beihai says is perfectly interpreted as being both pro-triumphalist and pro deeply escapist. And I hope they don't tip or wink at it too early. That's all.
Yeah, I guess like the one thing we don't have a really good idea that's going to happen is like the idea of the mental seal, and like that's the whole reason he was able to gain power of the ship to begin with, right? Is because he definitely is not definitely didn't undergo the mental seal, where there's like this worry that like some people might have it and didn't say anything.
Yeah, but isn't that just like a long walk to get to the outcome? Like the only outcome that's required is we need a plausible reason for him to be in control of this ship. And he
Yeah,
could just do it because Wade like says so and wrote it down.
yeah,
Like, we
yeah,
don't actually need, and I think that's why they cut that whole character.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can see them just like yeah saying oh it's yeah because Wade said so like you said, but it's just like an interesting dimension that we're losing from the original story, and maybe it's okay, like maybe like the story is more complicated for it to begin with, and there's nothing really happens because of it like that, like really like the mental seal, the only real consequence of the mental seal is Zhang Beihai's arc. It kind of just fizzles out after that. Okay, well, I have the next two picks for round three and round four, and I'm gonna go with a similar theme for both of them. So another one of my favorite scenes from Death's End is the scene of Changxin and AA discovering curvature propulsion. You know, AA asking for the really expensive bar of soap, and they're like, "Why? Why do you want the soap from like the ancient era?" And then she puts it into the water, and it's like, "Oh yeah, surface tension." And that part's cool on its own, but the I think the even cooler part of it is like when like AA like describe where AA and Changxin like have like this wordless like interaction between each other, right? And they're like they both know like they've discovered something, but they can't say it out loud because like the Trisolarans are always listening, right? And so like they don't want to put Yin Ming in danger, they don't want to put themselves in danger. But then like as soon as they get into a Sophon free room, they like explode, be like curvature propulsion, and, like they get it. Like that part is just great. That's the like, again, like the scientific concepts are one thing, but like the kind of wordless interaction is among my favorites of the book. Just like the excitement of like discovering this groundbreaking technology that's gonna be potentially like save the human race. Obviously, the a lot of story happens after that, but that part is always among my favorites.
I love that you picked that. I like that.
Yeah, me too.
And as we move into round four, like I said, I have a theme here about wordless communication. And I was worried that Thalia, you're gonna take my pick because I also going to talk about the part of natural selection, but it's a little bit later. It's the wordless communication that the crew of the natural selection has when they're like discussing like what they should do to
Mm-hmm.
get the resources. Like they're kind of just like glancing at each other and they kind of get the idea and like they just like keep talking fuel, 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 fuel. We need fuel. We need resources. We need, but they're not saying it out loud. They're kind of just like glancing at each other and kind of getting the gist. And Zhang Beihai eventually does get it too, but it's a little bit too late. And then the natural selection is blown up by I forget which one. It's not gravity. No, which one is it? It's not blue space either. I don't know. One of the ships blows it up, and then they get blown up. um, but yeah, like the wordless communication between them. I don't know how they're going to film it, but it's also it's just it's such a cool thing. Like just like wordless tension that happens, and like just like a shared understanding of like where they're all going. Like people are going mad up to this point, and like you can tell like the Starship Earth or whatever they came up with to kind of go forward on the human race isn't that going to work, and they're running out of resources, and they
Nice.
yeah, it's such a great part.
I'll say two things. One, I'm happy you chose that. I do know that it's a pretty divisive scene, though. A lot of people did not like find it believable that they would have that interaction. I think it's a really powerful scene, and I liked it as well.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, the internet doesn't always agree.
What?
Blowing our minds here.
Yeah. Oh,
Talk about
sorry.
hot takes.
All right, all right. Everyone sit down for this one. The part that I actually liked about that, the way that that ended, was that, everyone reaches the same conclusion. Someone's a nanosecond ahead of someone else, and that's all that really matters because Zhang Beihai and everyone inside natural selection is killed by ultimate law. Ultimate law being the
Right. That's it.
European one whose captain commits suicide mysteriously. And, we understand it's because that's his solution to the trolley problem here is to just off himself. But then, like, before you can even get a second to breathe, he doesn't let you. And the author says, like, but ultimate law is not who remained in Eden because
Yeah.
space was one step ahead of them and they'd put everyone in a vacuum and then they attacked right back. So it's that like 1-2 punch that I really appreciate so much about this kind of storytelling. And that's what I find in Singer's chapter as well. Like we get so much into this insight of Singer and you get an idea of like where he comes from and why he exists and his culture and the relationships in his hierarchical society. And he sends this, and you think like this is why humanity is going to meet its end. And then people who have done the math say like, nope, actually he sent it like 1 year after the actual strike arrived. So someone was just a nanosecond faster. And all of that introduction to Singer, it was true, but it didn't matter at all. Ultimate Law was faster, but they didn't get to live either.
And it's foreshadowed like by the dinner scene, right, with Roger's father, right? So we know that's got all this stuff is going to happen. I mean, I'm guessing. Like, if I had to bet again, I think
I
this
also
stuff is
thought
going to
it
be
was
adapted.
foreshadowed in that
Yeah.
the Pakistan Indian, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's pretty clear, right? Like, if for book readers, like that, it's like going over to another ship for or another camp for resources, right?
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, we know what that's from.
No, I'm in no danger of taking your pick because I'm still in my lane of things that I think could be self-contained. And I would say that would be when Chengxin is reawakened in the bunker era and gets this little sightseeing tour and sees how humanity has evolved again and had a new era, beyond the crisis and deterrence. And they've gone to live in space and they have that like self-contained experience with the microscopic black hole and we get the tale of Galway. I think it'd be really cool to just like almost like VR into that memory, and I see it as foreshadowing for something that Guan Yifan and Chongqing say to each other, post the two-dimensionalization, is that now ordinary people have to consider things that used to be just the realm of philosophers, like the choices that you make as you climb up that ladder of responsibility, as Chongqing writes in her passed outside of time actually matter. You have to consider time and space and where they stop and whether someone's dead or alive and whether that matters, just because humanity is like reaching further and further and approaching the fundamental laws of physics and math. And I think it's excellent foreshadowing for like the time vacuum that separates Changxin and AA, and just a warning and a reminder of how unforgiving the forces of the universe are. So I hope we show that in some way that I trust the showmakers to adapt.
I honestly thought it was gonna be your first pick.
I thought about it. But I just saw Dune again, and I was thinking about Christopher Walken and how they included just enough of him in that movie so he didn't overtake. And I was like, man, wouldn't he be perfect as like the meteorite collector? Not so much that he like overtook the entire vibe, but I think it'd be delightful.
This is like a record for the number of times Christopher Walken has been mentioned in an episode, in a single episode.
And it will remain an untouched record. So yeah, Gao Wei, as Dan knows, is definitely a favorite for me. So that was my pick. But I look forward to you disagreeing with me, Priya.
Oh, I'm not going to disagree. I feel like a lot of the scenes that you guys picked up on, I think just tell me that I need to really, really do a reread of these books, because I did forget a lot of the scenes, and I don't have the narrative in as much chronological order in my head as you guys seem to.
What an excellent plug for the summaries episode, where you can revisit all the summaries of all the books in one place.
That was excellent. That was great. Great timing on that. So I will go with a couple of more obvious scenes that I want to see, versus the more your recollection is more impressive than mine proving scenes. So I'm surprised it hasn't been said yet. So I'll just say it. I want to see the scene where Luoji takes a walk on the icy lake and discovers, or dark forest theory is revealed to him. But it's going to be a little bit of time before we find out as the reader, right? Like things become apparent to him, and then slowly the reader also finds out, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that visually will be a wonderful scene, and I would be shocked if they don't try to turn that scene. It's kind of like the universe winking at you scene. It has to be done. And so I have faith that they'll do it, and that they'll do a good job of it. These are also like the visual elements that I can see the show already has been playing with. Will really give them an opportunity to bring more of that to it. It's almost like a mood setting kind of scene in some ways for the series. So I think they'll do that. And then I can go on to my next scene because I'm next in the next round too.
I just have clarification I wanted to ask.
Go ahead.
So are you more interested in seeing like that drop into the icy lake where it's revealed to him, or more interested in adapting like the cigarette in the dark scene where it's revealed to us?
Oh, I think that I'm interested in seeing the scene in a way that doesn't immediately make clear to the reader, or the viewer in this case, but kind of hints at it. Like strongly hints at what it is, and gives the reader, the viewer, an opportunity to kind of put the pieces together. I don't want it to be like spelled out for the viewers, but eventually it should be pretty clear. Of course, the show cannot take as much time with it or play around with it as much as you can in narrative form in a book. But I like the moment of epiphany for the character versus for the audience.
Okay. Having those be separate and like hinting at it more than the joke that we're told about never play with God?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. That's a really good question to ask, actually, because there is a difference in the effect of doing it one way versus another. So that's a good point. And my other scene is I know that Dan brought up how he wants to see the interaction between Yun Tianming and Cheng Xin. And just the logistics of how they communicate with the lights and the tension of, you can't say anything that could cause the red light to go off. What I want to see is how they're going to bring the fairy tales themselves to the screen, because of course he can't just say them, he can't just narrate them. It has to be brought to the screen in some sort of visual form. And I know that Talia is going to roll her eyes at me, but I'm just thinking of how they they brought the Deathly Hallows stories to life in Harry Potter. They did it through some type of animation. And I think that these very well could also be conveyed through animation. Uh, so that would be that would be something I'm interested in seeing, honestly. Because I don't think it would land the same way necessarily if you have like actors playing out these fairy tale characters. I think that some sort of animated format would work best for that. So I'm very curious to see what direction they'd go in for that.
Couldn't you just see it happening just in the VR headset though? Like I could see him doing it that way, right? Like the Jin goes back after the conversation and then like puts the headset right and then kind of replays the story, or I don't know, like maybe Will gives her the headset or something like that. I can see it happening in VR. They've already established that world, and it's sort of outworld, like there's like it's not animated, but it's like there's like unnatural stuff, like the people floating up in from the syzygy, right? I can see it happening
Like
in
with the
VR.
same characters that we've gotten to know, like with Will and Jin themselves in VR, or
No,
just
I hope.
with
I mean, I hope it's entirely new characters, right? I hope
well,
they
yeah, they're
yeah,
not meant to be exact analogs, and I think Chongqing thinks about that. Like,
yeah. It's too
if you
obvious
think
if
I'm
it
going to
is.
sail away from the solar system with another man, like she doesn't quite map one to one with Dewdrop.
Yeah, I think it's too obvious if it's like if it's actually Jin, right? Yeah, I think it'd be great if they just like spend an entire episode with an entirely new cast and like it's just like a bottle episode, which is like what it is in the
Totally.
books too, right? It's just like it's so surprising that it just goes on like forever in the books, and it's. I mean, I loved every second of the fairy tales. So yeah, I really hope they do those justice too, and like they put a lot of as much effort as Lewis Houston did in the books, like it's to making it separate and different and just feeling different. Like hopefully it is that way in the show too.
And those fairy tales are very hard to write. And I remember when I first read them, when we first talked about them together, I was like, he gives himself a pat on the back for it many times in the narrative itself. And I think he deserves to be proud of himself for what he has pulled off. So I don't begrudge him that. But I think that I would kind of disagree with you on the fact that it could be done in a VR form, because I think that that would take away from the fantastical element of it, because the fairy tales were a true departure from a lot of what else is going on in the narrative in terms of sci-fi. I think that of course the fairy tale was trying to create metaphors for scientific concepts, but the way that it's told, it invites you to kind of fall into a world of things that very much feel like a fairy tale. So I want it to be visually represented in a way that feels not like science or anything sciency, but like a fairy tale, because the whole purpose of telling it as a fairy tale is to not raise any alarm bells that any of this could have anything to do with science. And I think that even in the book itself, um, it said that Chengxin often, or at many points, found herself getting lost in the fairy tale of it all, and having to kind of snap back to, wait, I'm going to have to remember every word of this and transcribe it later on. So it's almost like that that being pulled into a fairy tale feeling. I want that to be conveyed in whatever way they visually represent these fairy tales. So I think that doing it in a way that doesn't feel like it's like VR or whatever would I think that would be more impactful for me, at least.
I mean, it could be. I just see it as like they've already established that as like just displaying a foreign world in like in a way that like, and it doesn't have to even be in the same style of the VR game, right? It can be, like a lush setting. Like it doesn't like because they in all the VR settings, it was always sort of like a monocolor, or like there wasn't much like like when they saw the English castle, right? It was all sort of like really like gray and blue, right? Like there's like not a lot of like vibrant colors to it. And when they're in the desert, like the computer theme is all sort of brown and tan, right? But there's no reason they couldn't have like a really lush palette of colors to kind of display the fairy tale in sort of a different light, right? But then use the mechanism, like the actual mechanism of the fairy tale to kind of convey the story.
Yeah, I guess I see what you're saying. The other part though that I really want to see is her, like, the aftermath of having this conversation, of her having to frantically remember everything, because it's so hard to like hear a
Yeah,
story just like verbally spoken to you and then have to remember all the little details of it and like frantically like write it down, because it's really hard to do that. Like people can't just memorize things like that, and that too, like when you're being told something, to then remember it and then transcribe is the frustration of that. I would be interested to see that as well, because it's kind of like an impossible situation to be put in, that like so much is riding on these stories being deciphered correctly,
yeah.
and the almost like near impossibility of being able to do that.
Yeah, just the sheer complexity of the stories and like having to remember every word and thinking like this is this is like humanity is like gonna live or die based off of me remembering every single word.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
definitely.
an immense amount of pressure to have on one's shoulders. So
Yeah, yeah,
And they rightfully tell her that she's a hero after she concludes. Like she recites this like forwards and backwards 5 times and then collapses. And they do tell her like that Will is the greatest warrior that humanity's ever created, and Chongqing is a hero, that Jin is a hero. So they do recognize it, which I hope we also get.
yeah,
yeah, it
definitely.
really is like the epitome of like Herculean effort on like both their parts. To, on his part, to make sure that nothing, not even one piece of this, can be misconstrued as anything but a fairy tale, when its entire purpose is to be everything but a fairy tale. And for her to remember every little detail of it, and know that every little detail means something more. And that's the beauty of it, I think.
Beautifully put, Priya. All right, my last pick. Well, I'm glad the fairy tales got their due diligence, because, yeah, it wouldn't be a worthwhile episode if we didn't mention it. But now it allows me to do something which is like more purely reflective of what I'd like to see. Um, and for me, that would be in Death's End, when By Ice has nightmares of his old teacher, the legend of Ding Yi. And he it like begins with a true memory of, speaking to his more cautious teacher and mentor, and then sort of slides and slips into like the desert sand, collapsing into a sinkhole, into the Mokskramen, a black hole, some kind of incredible force of nature from which escape is impossible. And he wakes up in a cold sweat and realizes what this slip of paper is. So the nightmares of Ding Yi, and that moment or that scene has, I just think, like so many mic drop moments of dialogue. There's like the time when he's like grabbing Vasilenko and screams at him like weakness and error and ignorance. Weakness and ignorance are not barriers to survival, but arrogance is. And that, you know, draws their mind back to the droplet. And I thought that was so incredible, but we don't even get any time to recover because once they start to see the slip and they become the first victims of this slip, Vasilenko himself says, you know, turn off the drive, like turn off the engines. Let's just have some peace at the end, showing incredible spirit. And then like his last words to his crew are like, we haven't known each other long, but we've worked well. And let's not forget that once we lived together on the solar system. You know, he shares this realization that this end and this death is coming, not just for him and his crew, and not just for all of humanity, but every bacteria, every single cell in the solar system is going to meet this same end. And they, you know, die holding hands. And just moment after moment of that, starting with those nightmares of Dingy, I really hope we get to see experienced, not just as like the cities start to collapse. I hope we get to see that particular crew. Although I guess it would be memories of like Vera, not Dingy. I don't remember how the
Yeah, that was my question. It's like it's interesting to pick it because like we haven't really got a Dingy character yet, right? Like
it would have to be one of Vera's students that we just haven't interacted with, I think.
yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's because Dingy plays a big part in the next couple, you know, in the next book for sure. And he played a big part in Three Body Problem as well, and they sort of got rid of all those scenes. Like at the end of Three Body Problem, it's Dingy Wang Miao, like who got the bug speech, right?
Yes.
And in the show, it was Saul and Jin. So I don't think Dingy maps onto either of those. So yeah, maybe it's introduced later on, or like I don't know, Augie's sort of
No,
the
I
wild
don't think we
card,
get
right?
that character, but some kind of flashback and nightmare would be cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
Ding also, I think, discovers media-free nuclear fusion. And so that's why, like, Zhang Beihai or Raj goes to visit him and
yeah.
talks about the direction of scientific advancement. So I don't know what they're going to do since they don't have that character, but he definitely is a legend, and I hope his ideas get some screen time, even if he doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, like they need to introduce, like they need to have someone to fulfill that role, right? And like to have like, yeah, like you said, like he's the one that like that talks about like the propulsion. He's the one that discovers the droplet. He's the one, you know, like the that gets killed for the first thing by the droplet. So yeah, there's a lot for
Mhm.
him to do.
But take it away, Dan. You have our, unless Priya wants to have an opinion on this like first slip of paper. I'm excited to hear your last pick, Dan.
Yeah, so my last pick is I think it'll be a very pivotal scene in the show. It was pivotal scene in the books, and a highly emotional scene, which is Cheng-Chi's decision to push or not push the button once the Trisolarans attack is, or the Santee attack is noticed right after she takes over the button from Law G or from Saul here. There's lots of cool descriptions in the book about her kind of going back in time and thinking about like, do I really want to erase like billions of years of human history for, you know, just to push this button, on even though this is something I really want to do, and she doesn't. She throws it away. I think like just her emotional like struggle of like of a responsibility between the human race and being a sword holder and taking this position, and then I think ultimately realizing like she was put there not to push the button, right? That's basically her job is not push the button, and eventually just like throwing it away, and then the attack actually happening and her going outside, and kind of seeing the destruction and fearing the worst. I think that is going to be a very pivotal part, maybe even like a season-ending part of the show. However they film it, but I think however they do it, it's gonna. They have to include it almost verbatim, right? And I think it's gonna be like it's gonna be a great scene for the show, and I would like that's why I pick it as one of my things that I would like to see adapted.
I mean, the way you put it, Dan, is so beautiful. Like her realizing that she was put there to not push that button. That is the whole point. But the neckbeards on Reddit don't get that. That's why they condemn it as an individual mistake that
Right.
Chung irrationally makes.
Right,
So,
because she's a feminized woman, right? Like she, like
or
you know,
whatever their
if
reasoning is.
yeah,
But
if Wade was there, he would have pressed it. He would have killed both civilizations, not a thought. Without
then
who
there's
cares?
no light speed ships.
Right.
Yeah, no pocket universes. I don't know. I would love for it to be included exactly as you said verbatim. That's all I mean.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. And I think that we already see Jin's character really embodying the spirit of Qingxin in a lot of ways. And I think that I can already see that character being one to not do all the things that Qingxin wouldn't do or to do all the things that she would do. So I think that this will translate very well given the actor and the portrayal of Qingxin that we have in Jin.
All right. Well, that concludes our scheduled rounds. I kind of want to talk about some of the big things that we didn't pick, which is sort of interesting. Obviously, the droplet attack is going to be a big set piece, and none of us picked that, which is interesting. I thought for sure that someone would pick the way of tea conversation because I think that's also very pivotal. I was almost going to pick it, but yeah. Any other and of course the end. There's so much stuff that happens at the end. I really wanted to pick the death line scene with them getting stuck in space, but couldn't fit it in there with only 5 rounds.
Yeah, there were things I couldn't fit in, but I think we hit a lot of the big ones. I did think we were going to skip the fairy tales until the very last round.
Shout out to Helena in Constantinople, is it? Who first
Oh
uses
my
the
gosh,
40
yes.
fragment. I'm pretty sure they're gonna open up like a season 3 with that or something.
So I had that on my list as I hope they don't adapt it. Only because the same thing for Singer, right? I think it'll be weird.
I think they will adapt it though because that's such a way to open, like way to open a season
Don't
to a
you think
show.
that would appeal to Weiss and Benioff so much? Like, oh my God, we get to show Constantinople. Like,
It's like let's
And
do
she
a
gets
mini Game of Thrones moment.
yeah,
here.
exactly. Let's do a little mini Game of Thrones scene. Like, however, or not a
Gonna
cold
do it.
storage.
I'm so confident they're gonna do it. Like they were born to do it.
you get a brain in a bag, right? Like
They're going to do it.
I think that would
The
be
first
hilarious.
10 minutes. It's gonna be the first 10 minutes of season 3.
it could be.
Just like the pre-credits or something.
Yes, exactly. It's gonna be akin to what the Cultural Revolution scene of Ye Wenjie's father being like executed was like at the start of the season. That's how like
And they need to have a
Yeah.
fuller credits. They need to have credit scene song that isn't apologizing for itself if they're gonna do that.
yeah, I suppose so. I mean I think I remember saying that I liked the opening credits, but then you guys
They only
pointed
did it
out
once, yeah.
I thought that Netflix was like just automatically skipping them for me. I didn't know that they just didn't put them in because sometimes it just like skips, but I guess I stood corrected.
I
Yeah,
did think
just
it would
the
be
ones.
cool to see, Changxin and AA with the false attack, like the
Oh yeah.
false alarm. I thought that'd be interesting. If we could just do like a tiny little like courtroom scene to see them arguing about the trial for Bronze Age and they're accusing everyone of being traitors against humanity or accusing Wade, like I think that would be interesting. Just to like, like you're saying, have a mini Game of Thrones, have a mini like courtroom episode just to like switch up the genre and see if they can do that. I think that'd be interesting, but it certainly did not make my top 5.
That was on my list, but I was like, I think the other things I picked, I would have liked more to see adapted. Where that one is like, I can see them mixing it up, right? Like, I like the AA tech interview part of it, where like chooses the kids to go on the ship.
Oh my gosh, yes, the technical interviews that AA gives those school children. Absolutely, I did think about that. Just see who will live.
And of course, maybe we would be remiss if we didn't talk about Luo Ji and throwing up from the wine in the bottom of the sea, We have to
Oh, how
see.
could I forget that? That was my favorite.
I was so afraid that both of you would bring that up.
Oh my
Or Luigi
God.
getting murdered by the couch. I mean, we have to have that scene.
They have to, the wine is a must. The wine has to happen.
I do like the Dasha amounts that we're getting, so hope we get the same amounts moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like they're already establishing the relationship between him and Saul, right? So like I can see like, Saul almost getting killed like a couple, it was like 4 times by the killer
Benedict
5.2.
Wong can do no wrong.
I was just about to say, what was the adage, the old adage?
You know that old saying, that ancient saying our grandparents used to tell us, Benedict Wong can do no wrong.
Yes, I've fully accepted that as a motto for this entire show now.
Thank you for the concept, Dan. Fun episode.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully it was fun. Hopefully the listeners had have thoughts. If you have thoughts, like email them in. It'll be
And
interesting to hear.
I want to say how impressed I am by Dan's ability to compile an entire list of scenes from all three books. So, well done there.
Yeah, I put together a list of what is it? I'm looking at it right now. It's 36 different scenes from Dark Forest because a lot of it's been adapted already, and then 58 scenes from Death's End because also, and that's without the Staircase Project and all the other stuff they adapted already. So yeah, a lot of stuff. And Death's End is just huge, right? So yeah, it took a while for me to get that list together, but I wanted us to have like a.
I said all three books because I know that like a scene list for book one, even though it's been done, lives rent free in your brain. So. So I believe that list exists, but in the brain realm. But
Yeah.
I was very impressed by the thoroughness of it. So thank you for creating that, and I think that it helped jog my memory a lot. So yeah, that was very helpful.
Yeah, well, thank you guys both for participating, and thank everyone for listening. Please check out Rehydrate.space for release episodes, reading lists, pronunciation guides, book summaries, and all the other stuff we put up there. Leave comments by emailing us at rehydrate@fastmail.com, on Twitter at RehydratePod, or on Mastodon at rehydrate@mass.to.